Welcome back. Glad you could join me today. I haven't been out taking photos of birds for nearly a month. Hopefully next week I've got a bit of time that I can go out and take some photos of birds. But a few days ago I realized that the photos and the videos that I took from our recent trip at Easter to northern New South Wales have just been sitting on my computer. But I hadn't done anything with it and certainly hadn't shared it to my followers on YouTube. So today I want to share with you the joys of finding new birds and the excitement is when you photograph new birds, especially in the wild, you just get that feeling like, wow, never seen this bird in the wild. I'm talking in the wild where there's not much human content. We've been to Rosellas and some of the local rainforests here where the birds are very used to human contact. When you go out in an area where the birds aren't used to human contact, then quite a few of the birds can get very skittish. Get closer to a city, they're more prone to being acceptable of you being very close to them. And I experienced both of these things on holidays. So we went to Armidale, which is around 7 hours drive for us. While we were down there, I took my Nikon Z6ii, the Nikon 200 to 500, in case I see some wildlife, my Takina 17 to 35mm to do some waterfall photography if I saw there, or some early morning landscapes, and the Nikon 24 to 85. Now, I wasn't expected to do too much wildlife photography. I'd looked online, they said not much bird life at this time of the year, it gets quite cold. I'm still taking the lens just in case, and I'm glad I did. We got to Armidale late in the afternoon, drove around, saw some sightseeing, had a nice dinner. The next morning I told my wife, well, I'm going to get up early, see what sunrise is like, and just see what I can photograph. And to me, I'm very open when I'm on holidays. Whatever I see that takes my fancy, I will take a photo of it. I was hoping for some nice sunrise, but quite cloudy, very cold, 4 degrees. We're not used to that sort of cold too much in Brisbane, but it was nice to be out. There wasn't much wind around. I had my eye, when we come into Armidale, there was this place, that could look really nice for sunrise. Drove there, it was just flat. And you're like, nah, it wasn't going to work out. So I said, okay, well, I'll just turn down this country lane, start driving down there, think well, maybe I'll see a country scene that I can photograph. There was a couple of shots that I go whoa, wow, this looks pretty good, but the sun's still pretty low. Have to wait for the sun to be up a little bit more for that. Driving down, and what do I see on the side of the road but some eastern Rosellas, which I've never photographed before. I had all my gear on the front passenger seat just in case I needed to change lenses very quickly. So I just stopped the car, took the Takina off my Z6ii, put the 200 to 500, went down the window, and just straight out of the window took this photo here. I was just wrapped and go perfect, I'm going to get some close-up photos. Well, the bird had a different idea. As soon as I got out of the car with my camera, started walking closer to them, they just all took off into these huge dead trees, into this paddock. And there was at least 30 odd birds. It doesn't look like there's many birds in these trees, but there was about 30 odd birds, Rosellas and other parrots that I could see. I could just hear them. And they go okay, I'm just going to be very patient. So I walked up to one of the big fence posts and I just sat my camera on the fence post and I go I'm just going to wait. I'd seen they were feeding, and early morning, this is when the parrots feed, so I said, I know they're just going to come down. It took about 10 minutes and the parrots came back down. Some of them were eastern Rosellas and some of them were red-rumped parrots, and the eastern Rosellas, I had some juveniles and some adult eastern Rosellas, and the difference in the colors between the two was so amazing. So here's some of the video, and you can see they're all just foraging on the ground. There was also a magpie with them. Now, normally magpies sort of hunt the chicks and they eat the eggs and all that, but here they were all feeding amongst themselves, and that's the beauty of nature. Sometimes nature comes together and says we're going to put our food away, we're having a meal, let's get stuck in and eat some of these seeds. What you see in front here are red-rump parrots, males, and the grey ones are the female red-rumps. And the bird at the back is an adult eastern Rosella. It's just full of colour. Here we've got some immature and also some mature eastern Rosellas. And look at them, they're in amongst the tall grass, but The Z6ii had no problem at all focusing on these birds. And I was just taking video of these birds because I tried to take some photos, but it was very difficult to actually focus on the birds while they were amongst the grass. And you're like, well, the Z6ii is great for video. I just want to share some of the video. So this is the one I shared earlier. You can see these eastern Rosellas are just beautiful in color. There's a magpie feeding away. Look how close it is to the red rump. The red rumps have not a care in the world. They're having a feed. And I've zoomed in here to show you how difficult it is to see birds when they're in the dead tree. This is a pair of red rump parrots in this very big tree that I showed you. And there was about 30 of them in that tree. And it was only with my camera zoomed into 500 mils that I could start counting these. And there were red rumps, there were the eastern Rosellas, there was a few magpies, there was a butcher bird in there. These are some juvenile eastern Rosellas. Look at the difference in color between the juveniles and the adults here. See the adults, the colors are very well defined. A given fact that I'm very biased towards my Z6ii because people complain it's not that good for bird photography. But if you get used to it, if you learn that, okay, it's not a Z9, it's not the new release Z8, but it can still take great photos. You've just got to select the correct AF mode. Now I was in dynamic area AF, and I was finding it because of dynamic area AF, you've got quite a few squares around the center point. It was just jumping between the grass at the front, the tall grass stems, and the parrot. I'm just going to go to single point. And at single point, every photo I took was pin sharp. Only took me a couple of seconds because the beauty with mirrorless is don't have to take my eyes off the viewfinder. I just press the I menu button and I went from dynamic area AF to single point and bang, dunk, dunk, dunk. I got a few great photos. I was just so happy. I go like, beauty. I've got what I want. Now I'm just going to go look for something else and start driving around. There was not much else. And at the end, I'm going to share, just stick around because I want to show you a tree photo that I took of the tree being at least 100 meters away from me with the 200 to 500. And I got this great image of this tree just standing out in the paddock with a sort of hill in the background and the light just shining on it. So stick around for that. Then I came back into Armadale. Just as I was pulling into the motel, on the left, what did I see? Galahs. Galahs feeding right beside the road. And look at these Galahs here. They're just feeding on these trees. They're dropping the berries. They're just having a field day. Getting beautiful detail with the 200 to 500. I'm back in dynamic area AF now. And it was nice to see just the Galahs walking around right beside the road, photographing birds and also taking video. Photographs are great, but it's just a capture in time. But when you're seeing a video and you're seeing how the bird, let's say for this one here, it's holding a small seed and it's just eating away. But on the video, when you're seeing this live, you go like, oh, so that's how they do it. They just pick it up, bring it, just like we do. If we're eating takeaway food, we just pick up something and we just stick it in our mouth. This one here, just a side-on post, it's nice. What you're seeing there is the footpath. So the footpath is only about 60, 70 centimeters away from the curb. This shows you that you don't need an f4 or an f2.8 lens to get shallow depth of field. I've talked about this in the past about how to take photos of birds. When you get down low, your depth of field is so narrow. The Galahs are in focus. The background is all blurred out. But look in front, footpath is only about 30 centimeters away from the bird, this far, and it's out of focus. And all I see is these two Galahs nicely in focus. I was wrapped in that. Now here's some video. You can see like, so this is the photos I've been taking. Look at them. They're just walking around. See, it just picks up, has a bit of a chew. This one just got a bit upset. This is the one that I'd been taking a photo of. See how it's just picking up, holding the seed between its feet, just having a chew. Yep, okay, I've got what I want. Throws the rest out. The beauty I like with the Z6ii is I can slow the frame down. I was shooting at 50 frames per second. I've slowed it down just to give me that slow-mo effect as the Galahs is just moving along. After taking photos of the Galahs, I was wrapped and going like, beauty. Now it's time for breakfast. Start to get hungry. I'd seen a message from my wife saying, "Where are you?" Picked up my wife and daughter. We're driving into the center of town, and we're halfway between the motel and town, about a kilometer down the road, and we see this huge flock of galahs coming from the right and landing on our side of the road into these trees beside the road. And my wife looks at me because she knows me. She goes, "You're going to stop to take photos, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, just stop, but don't be too long." I said, telling a wildlife photographer not to be too long, that's an understatement. So I quickly got out. This was the first shot I took. Look at it. All these Corellas are in the tree feeding away. And I go like, "That's great, but I really want some video." And my daughter had said like, "Dad, can you take some videos of these Corellas? Because I just want to show my friends the birds that you videoed." Got out of the car, just knelt down, and I started taking some video of these Corellas here feeding away. Now what they're feeding on is what the Corellas that are in the tree dropping down, because they're dropping all the seeds and they're just having a bonza time feeding away. And you can see they're just flying around. This is at half speed, and then I just bring it back to full speed. And they're at the bottom of this tree here, and look at them. They're just foraging away because the Corellas in the tree, they're just dropping all these seeds, and these ones here and go like, "We don't need to be in the trees. All the food is right on the ground." And this is the same photo that I shared before, and you can see the tree was just full of Corellas. At least 50, 60 odd birds in this tree, and not just this tree, but all the way down the road. There was just hundreds of these Corellas. They were just squawking so loudly. This is very unique with Corellas and cockatoos. This is how they walk around on the trees, climb trees and all that. I walked a little bit closer and I got this great photo of this Corella feeding. Look at the detail in the photo. You can't tell me the Z6ii with the 200 to 500 aren't a great piece of gear for wildlife photography. I don't need any other camera. I don't need any other lens. Sure, the 200 to 500 is nearly 2 kilos and it's quite a bit of weight. If I had the money, the one lens I would buy in the Z series would be the 400 f4.5. That would be my dream lens to carry. I'm losing 100 mils, but it is just so light. That would be the lens that I would buy for my wildlife photography, and maybe the 1.4 Z teleconverter to give me close to 600 mils when I needed it. The weight of the Corella on these very fine branches were just pushing the seeds down, so it's doing a handstand, feeding away on these seeds. And this is right beside the road again, only a couple of meters, and these birds are used to human contact, so I was able to get not that close. I'm still about 10 meters away. And here's some beautiful photos. Look at this. This again shows you so little depth of field. The background is so blurred. Just so nice being able to take photos of these. On that morning, this was my dream shot, and I'm going to be printing this photo. I was using silent photography. I was shooting at 14 frames per second, but like I've mentioned, when you use silent photography at continuous high extended, which gives you the possibility of shooting at 14 frames per second, that reduces down between 8 and 9 frames a second. Average out 8.5 frames per second. And I got a beautiful shot. And this is one of the last photos I took. Shows you how close to the road I was. You can see the cars, you can see the trees are right on the curb. We spent another day in Tenterfield, and then our plan was to go from Tenterfield to Grafton on the coast. And on the way, we drove along Waterfall Way, we saw some waterfalls, and then we continued on to Grafton, and we drove through a mountain range, and the scenery was just amazing. And just after we climbed the top of this range here, we came down, and all of a sudden, we saw some birds just fly in front of us. Just ahead on the right was a parking area. And we stopped there, we took a couple of photos of the lookout, and I could hear parrots calling. I was just started walking away from this lookout. What did I see? Crimson Rosellas. Quickly raced back to the car, grabbed the camera, and started walking towards where all this sound was. Being on the mountain range, the road just drops down very steeply. So these birds were still around 15 meters up in the trees, but about level with me, which is great for photographing birds. This is a juvenile Crimson Rosella. The sun's just shining on its back and it's just sitting there. Then an adult Crimson Rosella flew just beside it, and it just kept looking from left to right and then straight on. I like how it looks like this. So although I didn't take a lot of photos on our trip, I was still blessed. I was still so wrapped of having some great photos and some great video of birds that I'd never photographed or videoed in the wild. And that's all the pleasure I need. I don't need to come home and say, when I traveled, I took a total of 60 or 70 bird species. It doesn't worry me whether I take photos of 2 types of birds, 1 type of bird, no birds at all when I go out, or 30 odd species of birds, and I'd be very happy. That's not my goal these days. My goal is to go out and enjoy my time in nature. That is all I need. Now take a look at this photo here. This is the photo that I was talking before of this tree when I photographed the eastern Rosellas. I'd gone down the road, the light is just hitting on. This was taken with the 200 to 500. And it's great sometimes when you photograph, you see something, you go like, well, it gets lost in all the surroundings. Sometimes having a zoom lens that you can really zoom in and isolate your subject is a bonus. If you enjoyed the video, give it a big thumbs up. Stay safe, enjoy photography, no matter what type of photography you do, and I'll see you next time.